The bathroom door creaked open, and my heart stopped. Steam curled around me like a shroud, the shower's hot water pounding my shoulders, but nothing could drown out the sound of his footsteps. Ethan, my best friend since we were kids, stood there, his silhouette unmistakable through the fogged glass. I froze, clutching the shampoo bottle like a lifeline. "Ethan, what the hell?" I yelled, my voice cracking with a mix of panic and something else I couldn't name. We'd been inseparable for years, sharing everything from late-night pizza runs to secrets about crushes. Well, almost everything. I'd never told him I was gay. Never told him that every time he slung an arm around me or laughed too close, my chest tightened with a longing I buried deep. "Relax, Caleb," he said, his voice low, teasing, but with an edge I didn't recognize. "I just need to grab something." He didn't move toward the sink or the cabinet. Instead, he stepped closer, the glass door between us feeling thinner than ever. I turned off the water, the sudden silence deafening, and wrapped a towel around my waist before sliding the door open. His hazel eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time in our 15-year friendship, I couldn't read him. We'd grown up in Tacoma, Washington, a gritty port city where the air always smelled faintly of salt and industry. Ethan was the golden boy, star quarterback, charming enough to talk his way out of detention and straight as an arrow. Or so I thought. I was the quieter one, the artist with a sketchbook always tucked under my arm, content to live in his orbit. But lately, something had shifted. The way he looked at me lingered too long. His casual touches felt deliberate, and I'd catch him staring when he thought I wasn't looking. "Caleb," he said now, his voice softer, almost hesitant. He was close, too close, his damp t-shirt clinging to his broad shoulders from the Seattle rain outside. "I need to tell you something." My pulse raced, the steam still swirling around us like a dream I didn't dare believe. Then he leaned in, and before I could process it, his lips were on mine, tentative at first, then fierce, like he'd been holding back for years. My knees buckled, the towel slipping slightly as I grabbed the edge of the shower door to steady myself. Forbidden desires surged through me, electric and terrifying. I pulled back, gasping. "Ethan, what are you doing? You're straight." My voice trembled, half accusation, half plea. He didn't answer, just looked at me with those damn hazel eyes, raw and unguarded. "I don't know what I am anymore," he whispered, "but I know I can't stop thinking about you." The world tilted. This was Ethan, my best friend, the guy who dated cheerleaders, who punched a bully for me in 8th grade, who knew every corner of my soul except this one. I wanted to scream, to kiss him again, to run. Instead, I stood there, dripping wet, my heart a war zone. We didn't talk about it the next day, or the day after. Ethan acted like nothing had happened, cracking jokes at our favorite diner, the Rusty Anchor, while I pushed my fries around, replaying that kiss in my head. Seattle's gray skies mirrored my confusion, the city's eclectic pulse a backdrop to my unraveling. I'd always known I loved him, but I'd locked it away, convinced it was one-sided. Now, every glance from him felt like a question I was too scared to answer. By the 3rd day, I couldn't take it. We were at his apartment in Capitol Hill, a cramped but cozy place filled with mismatched furniture and vinyl records. He was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, when I blurted, "We need to talk about the shower." His fingers froze mid-scroll, and the air grew heavy. "I don't know what to say, Caleb," he admitted, sitting up. His dark blonde hair fell into his eyes, and he pushed it back, a nervous habit. "I've been trying to figure it out. I've never felt like this about a guy before." He looked at me, vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. "But when I'm with you, it feels right." I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But doubt gnawed at me. Was this an experiment? A moment of confusion? I'd seen what happened when straight guys got curious. Hearts broken, friendships ruined. I couldn't lose Ethan, Not when he was my anchor in a world that often felt too big. "Ethan, I'm gay," I said, the words spilling out for the first time. "I've known since we were 16, and I've been in love with you for years." The confession hung between us, raw and exposed. His eyes widened, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he reached for my hand, his touch warm and steady. "I don't know what this means," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want to find out. With you." My heart soared and sank at the same time, torn between hope and fear. This was dangerous territory, uncharted and fragile, but the way he looked at me made me want to take the leap. That night, we sat on his balcony overlooking the city, the Space Needle glowing in the distance. We didn't kiss again, but we talked, really talked, about fears, dreams, and the weight of expectations. Ethan told me about the pressure to be the perfect son, the perfect athlete, the perfect man. I told him about hiding who I was, even from him, terrified of rejection. The Seattle night wrapped around us, cool and forgiving, and for the first time, I felt like we were seeing each other clearly. But the world wasn't as kind as that moment. Ethan's family was conservative, his dad a former military man who threw around words like traditional with a heavy hand. My own parents were more accepting, but they'd moved to Portland last year, leaving me to navigate this alone. And then there was our friend group, guys like Marcus and Leo, who loved Ethan's charisma but wouldn't hesitate to mock anything soft. If we pursued this, it wouldn't just be us against the world. It'd be us against everyone we knew. The next week, Ethan started acting strange. He'd cancel plans last minute, dodge my texts, then show up at my art studio with coffee and an apology. I was working on a mural for a local cafe, vibrant swirls of color that hid my turmoil. One evening, he showed up unannounced, his face tight with something unspoken. "Caleb, I saw my dad today," he said, pacing the small studio. He was talking about setting me up with his friend's daughter. I couldn't tell him I couldn't say anything. His voice cracked, and I saw the weight of it, the fear of disappointing the man who'd shaped so much of his life. "Then don't," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "Don't tell him. Don't tell anyone. Just figure out what you want first." I hated how cold I sounded, but I was scared too. Scared of being his secret, his mistake. He stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes searching. "I want you," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. Then he crossed the room in 2 strides and kissed me again, this time with a desperation that stole my breath. The paintbrushes I'd been holding clattered to the floor, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. But moments don't last. The next day, Marcus invited us to a bar crawl in Fremont, and Ethan went back to playing the role of the carefree jock. I watched him flirt with a girl at the bar, laughing too loudly, and my stomach twisted. Was this his way of pulling back? Of pretending that those kisses, meant nothing? I left early, the Seattle rain soaking me as I walked home, my heart a tangled mess of hope and hurt. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of Ethan laughing with that girl burned behind my eyes, each memory of his lips on mine now tainted with doubt. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was a fluke, a fleeting moment he'd regret. But when I checked my phone, there was a text from him. "Meet me at Pike Place. Noon. Please." Pike Place Market was alive with chaos. Vendors shouting, fish flying, tourists snapping photos. I found Ethan near the bronze pig statue, his hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. "I'm sorry about last night," he said before I could speak. I panicked. Marcus was there, and I didn't know how to act. "Act like yourself," I snapped, my frustration spilling over. Or is that too hard when you're pretending to be someone you're not? The words were harsh, but they came from a place of raw hurt. I'd spent years hiding who I was, and now, standing in the heart of Seattle's vibrant chaos, I couldn't bear the thought of Ethan doing the same. He flinched, but didn't look away. I'm trying, Caleb. This is new for me. I've never questioned this part of myself. But I'm not pretending with you. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. I meant every second of that kiss. Both of them. My anger faltered, replaced by a cautious hope. We walked through the market, the scent of fresh flowers and coffee grounding us as we talked. He admitted he'd been wrestling with his feelings for months, maybe longer. It started small, he said, staring at a stall of colorful produce. The way you laugh when you think no one's listening. The way you see the world through your art. I kept telling myself it was just admiration, but it's more than that. I wanted to grab him, to kiss him right there in front of the fish throwers and buskers, but fear held me back. Instead, I asked, "What now, Ethan?" Because I can't be your experiment. I can't lose you as a friend if this goes wrong. He didn't answer right away. We bought coffee and sat on a bench overlooking Puget Sound, the water glinting under a rare sunny day. I don't have all the answers, he finally said. But I want to try. I want us to figure this out together. His hand found mine, hidden between us, and for a moment, the world felt possible. But possibility is fragile. That evening, we went to a gallery opening where my mural was being showcased. The cafe was packed with Seattle's artsy crowd, tattooed baristas, poets in berets, and tech bros pretending to care about culture. Ethan stayed close, his presence a quiet anchor, but I could feel his tension. When a guy named Julian, a flirty painter I'd met at a workshop, started chatting me up, Ethan's jaw tightened. I brushed Julian off, but the damage was done. "Are you into him?" Ethan asked later as we walked to his car. His tone was casual, but his eyes betrayed him, jealousy, raw and unfiltered. "No," I said firmly, "but you don't get to act possessive when you're still figuring yourself out. That's not fair." The words stung, but they were true. I was falling for him, hard, but I couldn't let myself be swept away by someone who might not be ready. He drove me home in silence, the city lights blurring past. When he pulled up to my apartment, he turned to me, his voice low. "I'm not playing games, Caleb. I'm scared, okay? But I'm not walking away." He leaned over and kissed me, slow and deliberate, like he was staking a claim. My resolve crumbled, and I kissed him back, the car's warmth cocooning us from the world. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. We stole moments when we could, late-night drives along the coast, quiet evenings at my place sketching while he watched. Each touch, each glance, felt like a step towards something real. But the outside world kept creeping in. Marcus started asking why we were always together, his jokes laced with suspicion. Ethan's dad called him home for a family dinner, and I saw the dread in his eyes when he mentioned it. One night, we went to a queer bar in Capitol Hill, a test of sorts. I'd been there before, but for Ethan, it was uncharted territory. He held my hand under the table, his grip tight as we watched drag queens perform. "This is a lot," he admitted, but he didn't let go. I saw the wonder in his eyes, the slow unraveling of a man discovering a part of himself he'd never explored. It was beautiful, but it terrified me. What if he wasn't ready for this world? What if I was just a stepping stone? Then came the call that changed everything. Ethan's dad had found out he'd been skipping family events, and someone, probably Marcus, had mentioned seeing us together too often. He asked if there's something going on. Ethan told me, his voice shaking as we sat in my apartment. I didn't know what to say, so I just left. My stomach dropped. "You didn't tell him?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Ethan shook his head, his eyes pleading. "I will. I just need time." But time felt like a luxury we didn't have. I could see the storm coming, the inevitable clash between the life Ethan had always known and the one he was starting to want. The storm hit faster than I expected. It was a rainy Tuesday when Ethan showed up at my door, his face pale, his jacket soaked through. "My dad knows," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus told him he saw us at that bar. He's pissed, Caleb. He thinks I'm confused." I pulled him inside, my heart racing. "What did you say?" I asked, dreading the answer. Ethan sank onto my couch, his hands trembling. I told him it's not like that. That we're just friends. But he didn't believe me. He kept saying I'm throwing my life away. Anger flared in my chest. Not at Ethan, but at the world that made him feel like he had to lie. "You're not throwing anything away," I said, sitting beside him. "You're figuring out who you are? That's not a crime." But even as I said it, I felt the weight of his fear. His dad wasn't just strict. He was a wall, unyielding and cold. Ethan had spent his life trying to please him, and now that foundation was cracking. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I want to be with you, but every time I think about telling people, I freeze. What if they hate me? What if I lose everything?" His vulnerability broke something in me, and I pulled him into my arms, holding him as the rain pounded outside. For the first time, I realized how much he was risking, not just his family, but the identity he'd built his life around. We stayed like that for hours, talking through the fear, the what-ifs, the fragile hope that maybe we could make this work. But the next day, reality hit hard. Ethan's dad showed up at his apartment, demanding answers. I wasn't there, but Ethan called me after, his voice hollow. "He wants me to move back home," he said. "He thinks I need to fix this. He's talking about therapy, Caleb. Conversion therapy." The words felt like a punch. Conversion therapy wasn't just a relic of the past. It was still a shadow lurking in places like Tacoma, where old beliefs died hard. "You're not going," I said, my voice fierce. "You don't need fixing. You're perfect the way you are." But even as I said it, I saw the doubt in his eyes, the pull of a life he'd always known. For the next week, Ethan was a ghost. He stopped answering texts, avoided our usual haunts. I threw myself into my art, painting feverishly, each stroke a release for the pain I couldn't voice. My mural at the cafe was nearly done, a vibrant explosion of color that hid my heartbreak. When Ethan finally showed up at the studio, he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I told him I'm not going," he said, his voice steady despite the shadows under his eyes. "I told him I'm in love with you." My breath caught, the paintbrush slipping from my hand. "He kicked me out," Ethan continued, his voice cracking. "Said I'm not his son anymore." I crossed the room and pulled him into a hug, his body trembling against mine. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, but he shook his head. "Don't be. It hurts, but it's worth it. You're worth it." We kissed then, not with the desperation of before, but with a quiet certainty that felt like a promise. But promises are tested. Our friend group started to fracture. Marcus stopped talking to us. Leo made awkward excuses to avoid hanging out. The whispers followed us, especially at places like the Rusty Anchor, where we used to feel at home. Ethan moved in with me temporarily, his belongings crammed into my tiny apartment. We were building something new, but the weight of the world pressed down on us. One night, we went to a support group I'd found through a local LGBTQ center. Ethan was nervous, his knee bouncing as we sat in a circle of strangers who felt like family by the end of the night. Hearing others' stories, of rejection, of love, of resilience, seemed to ground him. "I didn't know there were people like us," he said as we walked home, the Seattle skyline glittering. "People who get it." That night, we made love for the first time, not just with passion, but with a tenderness that felt sacred. Lying in my bed, the city's hum outside, I realized we were rewriting our story, one moment at a time. But I also knew the hardest part was still ahead, living openly, unapologetically, in a world that wasn't always kind. Months passed, and we found a rhythm. Ethan got a job at a local gym, I finished my mural, and we carved out a life in the cracks of Seattle's vibrant chaos. We weren't just surviving. We were thriving, our love a quiet rebellion against the world's judgment. But the scars remained. Ethan's dad hadn't spoken to him since that night, and though he didn't say it, I knew it haunted him. One evening, we hosted a small dinner at our apartment, our first real attempt at building a new circle. There was Lena, a trans woman from the support group with a wicked sense of humor, and Javier, a queer artist who'd become my mentor. Ethan was nervous, but he charmed them with his warmth, and by the end of the night, we were all laughing over wine and homemade tacos. It felt like a glimpse of the future we could have. But the past wasn't done with us. One day, Ethan got a letter from his mom. It was short, handwritten, and heartbreaking. She didn't understand his choices, but wanted to see him. "She's trying," Ethan said, his voice thick with hope and fear. I encouraged him to meet her, even though my gut twisted at the thought of him facing that pain again. The meeting was at a quiet cafe in Tacoma, neutral ground. I waited nearby, sketching in my notebook to keep my nerves at bay. When Ethan came back, his eyes were red, but he was smiling. "She didn't say much," he told me, "but she hugged me. Said she's working on it. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a start." That night, we went to the backyard of our apartment building, where fairy lights twinkled above a wooden picnic table. It was the kind of Seattle evening that felt alive with possibility. Cool air, distant music, the city's pulse. Ethan took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "I used to think love was supposed to be easy," he said, his voice soft. "But this, it's worth every fight." I looked at him, the man who'd turned my world upside down with a kiss in a shower, and felt a certainty I'd never known. "We're worth it," I said, and he kissed me, slow and deep, the world fading away. The journey hadn't been easy. Rejection, fear, and doubt had tested us, but we'd chosen each other, again and again. Our story wasn't perfect. There were still battles ahead, family to mend, friends to confront, a world to navigate. But as we sat there, the space needle glowing in the distance, I knew we'd face them together. Love, I realized, wasn't just the spark of a forbidden kiss. It was the courage to keep going, to build a life in the face of fear, to choose each other no matter what. The mural I'd painted was unveiled the next week, a vibrant tapestry of color that told a story of resilience and hope. Ethan stood beside me at the opening, his hand brushing mine, and I saw our future in those swirls of paint, a life not defined by the world's rules, but by the love we'd fought for. And as the crowd applauded, I knew we'd already won.